Call the December 11th Board of Education meeting to order. So glad to have so many people here. It's so exciting. I'm going to start with recognitions.
All right, very exciting. So the first person we would like to recognize this evening is Natalie Bilat, I'm sorry. Okay, could you stand for a second, Natalie? All right, so this is really cool. Each and every year, we talk to Shannon Gagne, and she gives us samples of student artwork that we can take a look at to potentially use for our holiday season greetings card that goes out from the Board of Ed. So Katie and I, we actually have a lot of fun with this. Katie is my executive assistant. We get a chance to look at all the artwork, extremely talented kids. So this year, Katie was actually like, big noise from out front, like, this is going to be a quick one, Matt, like this. And she called me out, and we looked at Natalie's piece, and I have, I know you've received the card, but I'm going to actually pass it down. It's a beautiful, kind of majestic scene that really represents the holidays so beautifully. So we wanted to have Natalie come out tonight. We have some copies of the card for you. I remember from past, parents were like, can we get a few of those to keep, right? And we had forgotten about that in the past. So
Beautiful.
Beautiful artwork. I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there anything you want to tell us about your interest in art or your artwork or the particular piece of art? But we're so pleased to have it represent the Simsbury Public Schools.
Well, I just really love to draw
Great. Wonderful. Well, it's beautiful. I have the samples here, and congratulations.
Beautiful, beautiful card. Thank you so much. And I'm sure you'll do very well in college. Enjoy. And our next
All right.
recognition?
Yes. So also every year in December, we have an opportunity, CAPS does an awards presentation for one high school senior and one of our 8th grade students that really exhibit wonderful leadership skills in our school community. So what's really cool about that is we have a chance to go out to lunch with the kids and the family. So it was, we had a lot of fun over at the Farmington Club, had a nice lunch, and we have Madeline Oros here, and Scott is going to say a few words and let us know about Madeline. She was our award winner from 8th grade.
So sure. So Maddie, I kind of recognized in being my first year at Henry James right away in the hallway as being one of the biggest smiles that I could see coming up and down the hallway. And I've talked to the kids at Henry James a lot about leadership, and that alone is a way in being a leader and just being a shining person in the school. And when we put out the word to try to have a selection for this award, Maddie checks all the boxes: honor student, music in the musical, in select music, volunteers at their church, volunteers at the public library, and so when we were going through applications, hers rose to the top with a lot of that, and again, like just her general attitude around the school. But when I really, after we had done the selection process, saw why the teachers chose Maddie. We were at the Unified Theater performance that we had, and when I watched her from the audience in the leadership role that she took in the play and working with students with disabilities, she ran it. Like, she ran the whole thing, and the poise she had in working with those students was just incredible and inspiring, and makes you just proud to be in this profession. So everyone in the school was just really happy that Maddie was selected, her peers as well. So congratulations.
Bravo.
She's a tough negotiator. You should hear her negotiate for tickets at the Bushnell with her father to try to get in on the action so she can. So thank you for coming out, and congratulations.
Maddie, you have a lot of people with you here tonight. Do you want to introduce them?
These both are my grandparents, and my 3 siblings, and my mom and dad.
Awesome.
Thank you for coming.
Congratulations.
Great job, Maddie.
Keep up the good work.
Look at that smile.
Very
I
exciting.
don't see Caitlin at this point.
No, but I can still say a
Why
lot
don't
of
we do
great
that?
things about
Caitlin's a
Caitlin.
really neat
So,
kid, very accomplished. And
Caitlin is a Koff senior. She was the Simsbury High School Award recipient.
Yep.
Just an amazing student. If you do know her, she's just a great person, but she's also academically very strong. She's a leader within our school. She's an athlete, distinguished athlete, and she also does a tremendous amount of work to make life better for other people. So in addition to challenging coursework, she is our senior class president. She's also a member of student council. She is a nationally and state recognized swimmer. She very well may be in the pool tonight. She swims 6 nights a week. She's also a varsity soccer player. She is a Best Buddies mentor. She's a Special Olympics volunteer swim coach. And she's also coordinating the Connecticut PJ Day for us, and that's this Friday, so I'll put in a plug for that. That's December 14th, and this is organized by Connecticut Children's Medical Center. And what they do is they encourage adults and children to come dressed comfortably to work that day in sweats or maybe school appropriate pajamas. There are such things. Not maybe for me. I'm going to be wearing sweats that day. And if we all collectively are able to do that, we'll be a little bit more comfortable that day. The reason they're asking you to do that is young cancer patients, that's what they wear every day. They wear pajamas to help them endure their treatment and to just be comfortable themselves. And collectively, those funds can go a long way to really helping to bring cancer to an end, hopefully sooner rather than later. So I can't say enough great things about Caitlin. She's wonderful, and I just want to congratulate her and her family.
Great. That's great. Thank you very much. So that's it for our presentations. Wonderful. So we're on to board and administrative communications. Katie, I know that you came. Thank you very much for coming. I know you have somewhere to go,
Yes.
so we appreciate you coming and giving your report, and then by all means, get to your next adventure.
Okay, well, this week at the elementary schools, in theme with Computer Science Education Week, there is the Hour of Code, and I think this is the 5th year of this program, and high school students taking computer science are visiting the elementary schools to help out with that awesome program. As Principal O'Brien just said, there's the district-wide CCMC fundraiser this Friday. And it is certainly concert season, as all the elementary schools have their winter concerts featuring both the choral and instrumental programs, the band, orchestra, chorus, and jazz concerts at both the middle school and the high school level. I myself am a musician, and I have to excuse myself as I'm playing the orchestral accompaniment for this Thursday's high school chorus concert. So. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you for your report, and by all means,
Thank you, Katie.
Katie.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
We'll see you later. She had to be somewhere at 7.
Good
Thank
show.
you very much. I'm going to go back now to public audience. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? Well, okay, moving on. We're going back to communications. Tom?
I'm just in awe of the achievements we heard about tonight. I have nothing to add, but thank you.
Jen? Lydia?
Briefly, on the legislative piece, opening session is January 9th. I know we're not there yet, but it will be there in a few weeks. And we have a coalition called What Will Our Children Lose? It's a coalition between members of CASBO, CAPS, and CABE. And we had a meeting recently, and we discussed what's the new strategy coming forward come January. New co-chairs.
No, we're
Did I
fine.
do
Keep
that?
going. No, keep going. You're fine.
Katie says let it go.
I've been known to do this. So no word on new co-chairs for Education Committee or new commissioner yet, but we're just concerned of what's going to be coming down the pike come January. The mandates are up to about 300 so far, and we talked a lot about the boards of eds and town challenges that are affecting all our districts around the state, and then about the education funding efforts. And that task force has never met, so no proposals will be coming forward through the legislature until 2020. So at this point, things are kind of on a hold until January, and hopefully there will be some buzz come then. But again, when we were talking yesterday at the meeting and last week when we brought forward our legislative priorities, we have not had to have these kinds of meetings since 2010 when we had Governor Malloy first took the oath of office. So it's been 8 years since we are entering into this foray again, so it's going to be a very interesting, dynamic, interesting session, also interesting, parties and players around the table. So more to come on that, hopefully in January.
Thank you. Sue?
Good.
Mrs. Lemke?
In a continued effort to collaborate with some of my Farmington Valley colleagues, my fellow administrators of special education and I brought 2 professionals to the Farmington Valley over the course of the past couple of weeks to do some professional development on reading and dyslexia for both teachers at the secondary level as well as the elementary level. So we split them up kind of 7-12 and that K through 6. The feedback was phenomenal, and it just helps us to further our practice and deepen our capacity about working with our students that pose the most difficulties in reading. And we know that that is a skill that is non-negotiable that students have to have, learning how to read and then reading for learning. And again, feedback was great, and we look forward to more continued collaboration within the Farmington Valley. So I wanted to share that with the board.
Great to hear. Great. Mr. Sullivan?
Just a quick shout out from the athletic department that before we meet again in January, they will have hosted the 2nd annual Hall of Fame banquet, which is Saturday, January 5th. They've moved it to the Riverview this year because of the overflowing crowd from last year, so slightly larger venue. 10 inductees on Saturday night, January 5th, and if any board members would like tickets to that, just reach out to us or the athletic department. We'll make sure that happens. It was a wonderful inaugural event last year, and we're looking forward to it.
Great. Tomorrow is an early release day. We have, for our elementary teachers, a math professional development day. Betsy Gonzalez has worked to put that together. We have over 17 choices for our elementary teachers, and many of our teachers are presenting to their colleagues. So that's really exciting. And the high school and middle school are in their department meetings, and as is special ed, library media specialists, art, music, and PE are all together in their departments for tomorrow. And the second item that I have is that you know that our school start survey is out, and we have over 1,500 received respondents. We don't have any of the results yet. The middle school did their student survey yesterday, and the high school's doing theirs on Thursday. We will not get the results back from Hanover until into January. So, and it ends this Friday, the 14th.
I was gonna say, is it still
It ends
open?
Friday.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a reminder to
A reminder.
fill out your survey.
Yes.
Question about that, please,
Yes.
Erin. Well, what is the percentage response of the responses you have? What is that as a percentage of the surveys that you put out?
Right now, over 1,500 was a combination of parent guardians and our school staff.
Yeah?
And middle school, we did 7th and 8th grade, and it was probably at least high 80s because they did it all at the same time. So I think that we'll have a high percentage of 7th and 8th graders. And the high school on Thursday will be doing it during their advisory period, that they will have the opportunity to go into the link and take the survey.
Well, that's for the students.
That's for the students on Thursday.
The 1,500 is adults.
It's
Yeah.
all adults.
Out of
Out
how
of
many?
4,000,
That's what I
probably or
was
so at this
wondering.
I don't have
what
the
is the percent
percentage, but,
response among
yeah.
adults?
And more
Yeah.
adults can still be putting it in.
Oh,
before
absolutely,
Friday,
until
so that's not
Friday.
the final number.
So if you
Until
talk to
Friday.
anybody-
About 25% at this point.
Yep.
I'm sure we're going to send out a reminder, I think.
Tomorrow morning.
And honestly, 25% is high for
Good for
Yes,
us.
surveys.
yes, yeah. So a reminder will go out from Matt's office tomorrow.
But that
Everyone as
1,500
well.
includes teachers too, so it's
Yes.
not just
And staff.
parents.
No, it's
So that
adults,
25%
yeah.
is not, right?
Oh, correct.
Just
Yep.
families.
Staff and.
Yes.
Good point.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't have the breakdown in front of me, but I can get that for you if
No,
you're
no.
interested.
I just wondered if it was really low or really high, and what's kind of,
I thought it was pretty impressive when I was looking at the results
surveys.
in a short period.
That's
It's
pretty
only been
quick
out
to
since
get it.
last Thursday, so that's why I wanted to
People
mention
want
it
to be
tonight.
heard. It would
4
be nice to
days.
hear what they're having to say.
It's important. It's almost as important as the calendar.
We're not talking about that.
do we know if, when West Hartford is going to take up the vote or no?
They've put it on hold at this point right now, and I have not heard any further detail.
Okay.
Mr. Leclerc. Mr. Curtis.
Yes, one item, I wanted to, I put two kind of slides, some background information in your folders. I wanted to just spend a minute and kind of summarize for board members that weren't there and for the public the guidance we got at the three-board meeting, which we had a nice showing of Board of Ed members, we had Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. So the outcome of that meeting is a 2% expenditure cap, guidance of 2% to the Board of Education. So a couple things I just wanted to frame out for the board, because when we come back in January, we will initiate our presentation. Sue will kick things off for us with a special education program review and budget presentation. We wrapped up presentations today of our building principals that met with the cabinet. So we're off and rolling, and some things that I just want to reiterate and consider that the Board of Finance talked about as well. As we transition to a new governor, Lydia, you talked about that, the state deficit, what it looks like for the current year and in future years certainly lingers in the background. Our fixed cost and how our fixed cost number plays against that guidance from the Board of Finance. So if we roll forward our fixed costs in the organization at this point, we're at a 2.6% increase. What we really need to then take a look at, and I know board members are familiar with this, are our enrollment projections, which Neil will talk through tonight for us, and any efficiencies we can garner from the decline in enrollment. We're going to see a pretty substantial decline in enrollment at Simsbury High School this year. Pretty flat at the elementary level, but a decline of almost 60 students at the high school level. We will be able to capture some efficiencies through staffing levels in our analysis as we work through the budget process. So that'll creep us closer to that 2% number. So that's a positive. Also, how we look at operational cost savings efforts, that's something we do on an annual basis. Really, Burke, myself, when we analyze those equipment expenditures, different accounts, and are there any areas or efficiencies that we can garner there? And then there's new priorities and budget requests. So as our program leaders come forward, our principals come forward, they have different ideas and thoughts. We're going to hear about one tonight, certainly, with foreign language, that they would like support on to move forward our organization. So we listen to those rationales and are really pushing the conversation and the thought with our building leaders on how do we look from within, repurposing, reallocating, and have that as part of our conversation at a time when our organization is either declining in enrollment or staying flat. So how do we stay cognizant of our expenditures and our staffing levels and look at doing business differently for kind of new initiatives? So we're all on board for having those conversations, and that process is kicking off, but I wanted to kind of put that out to our board as kind of the framework as we move forward. Yep.
I will apologize for not being able to attend that meeting. And so I'm just wondering if you could give just a brief comment on where did that 2% come from? What's the rationale for that 2%?
Yeah. So I think they looked at a variety of things. We provided more background information this year to them than we have in the past. So we provided the cost increases of our contracts, our contractual costs. We demonstrated to them a snapshot of the enrollment and where the enrollment decline would be. And then what they did, Tom, is they started actually working on the mill rate worksheet a little bit, and they put various scenarios up. So they had only one scenario they showed at this board meeting at the Board of Finance, but the prior Board of Finance meeting, they started with, hey, if our goal was to create a flat mill rate, what would the budget increases look like for the various boards? They didn't think that was palatable. So they talked about if we provided the boards with what their fixed cost expenditures look like, what would that look like? So they played at different scenarios and came up at a 2% for us, and I think it led to a little bit over a 2.7, 2.4% tax increase.
Oh.
But yes, the town has a guideline that's a little higher than ours at 2.7, and I think that's attributable to the decline in enrollment at Simsbury High School.
And one of the reasons I just raised that question, and I know we're not into budget season yet, but it's not too soon to start thinking about it. I've always been bothered by these guidance numbers because of our fixed costs and contractual obligations. We're constantly, year after year, scrambling to try to make it to those numbers, those kind of 2% numbers and that we've been seeing, even though we have fixed cost inflation that's very often beyond the guidance number. And so what we do is we're looking for efficiencies. And what's always bothered me about that is that we're not investing. I mean, and I can't be
Yeah.
specific about that now, but I'm just wondering, are there things that we could be investing in, not just facilities, but educational
So-
activities that would take us beyond the 2%?
Yeah. I mean, those are conversations I think we have to have as we frame the budget. I will say this, and this isn't a pushback on you, Tom, but we have reinvested in members that have been on this board for a longer duration significantly in different programs with FTE that we've demonstrated to presentations in the board over time with full-day kindergarten, with intervention programs, with coaches, that have played off our overall staffing levels, which is one of the reasons why, quite honestly, the staffing level has not decreased significantly as our enrollment has decreased. So I think it's a balance of how we do those things and how we talk about those things and advocate for what we want. They did say at the end of the presentation, Rob Pomeroy did say, if there are things that the boards really feel strongly that they need to advocate for, let's have those conversations and let's put those pieces of data together for, for when we present.
It was a good
So-
meeting. It was a very
But
good.
I understand your perspective.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for that background, which I wasn't fully familiar with, but I would just encourage the district, as we enter this budget season, to bring additional investment proposals forward, even though we can't afford them with the guidance that we've been given, so that we can at least have conversation
Right.
about it.
Yep,
Yeah.
very good.
Thank you.
Okay, it's come to my attention that we have lost another family member of our school district. Mr. Fine was here for many, many years as a educator in Simsbury, and he was a teacher at Belden in this building, and he was principal of this building. And then he ended up over at Latimer Lane at the end of his career, but they didn't tell us how many years he was in Simsbury, but he was here for a very long time, and I had the good fortune of having him as a teacher. And he was so kind and thoughtful and caring an educator, and I love that I can keep remembering the people that have been in our lives here, because Simsbury, really, we are so fortunate to have these caring and empathetic people in the town, and we continue to have them, and it's just, we're very fortunate. And Mr. Fine was just wonderful and very well respected and very kind to everyone and all of his students. So I just wanted to remember him and remember all of our teachers that have come and gone, but we love having this quality of people, quality of humans here in town, and we really appreciate it. So that's my thought for the day. Moving on to approval of the minutes of November 27th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Personnel?
Just one item for your action tonight. I want to congratulate our wonderful strings teacher, Joanna Ferrari Bernhardt, on the birth of her son recently. And Joanna has taught with us at every level, high school, middle school, and elementary. She currently splits her time between Latimer Lane and Tooten Hills. And following the birth of her child a little while ago, she is requesting a leave for the rest of this year for child rearing purposes. So the dates that you see, the January 7th date represents the end of her maternity leave, and then it becomes the non-salaried child rearing leave absence. So I need you to make the motion as outlined in your exhibit, and we have already, fortunately, with the University of Hartford music program just around the corner, you can find quality people to come in and fill in positions like this for the short term. So if someone would read the motion as it's presented, please.
Move that the Board of Education approve the request for non-salary guaranteed leave of absence for Joanna Ferrari Bernhardt, effective January 7th, 2019 through June 30th, 2019.
Second?
Second.
Thanks. All those in favor?
Aye.
Well, good luck to her. Enjoy. Congratulations. Then we have the approval of our meeting schedule for next year, and we can all take a look at it, but I'd appreciate a motion.
Move that the Board of Education set their 2019 meeting schedule as outlined in the December 11, 2018 board exhibit.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you all very much. Forward to seeing you all for many days ahead. Now we're moving on to, as Mr. Goman left our board, he also left the seat of vice chair. And so we are looking to, at this point, we would like to, I'd like to open the floor for nominations for vice chair of the Simsbury Board of Education.
Okay, I'm going to move that Susan Salina be nominated for Vice Chairman of the Simsbury Board of Education.
I will second that.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of that nomination?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Are there any further nominations? Seeing none, I will accept the nomination. I'll accept a second motion.
Okay, I'll move that Susan Salina be elected as Vice Chairman of the Simsbury Board of Education.
Anyone second it?
I will second that again.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yay! You were late, I was nervous.
I thought I was ditching.
We did.
Congratulations, thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Thank you all. Poor
We
Matt.
can go home now.
We go way back.
How many years are you on this board, Susan?
What year is this, 2018? This makes 11.
Good for you. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Moving on to the World and Language Program Review.
Yes, I'd like to, as Betsy Gonzalez, our Director of Elementary Curriculum, and Amy Klebart, who is our Elementary Middle School Department Supervisor for World Language, will be doing the presentation tonight. But I'd also like to recognize Beth Hennessy, Principal at Central School, and Stephanie DeShana, who is our Department Supervisor of World Language at Simsbury High School, are here tonight as well in support and have been in the conversations and the planning for this along the way. So I will pass it off to Betsy.
Thanks, Erin. As a result of an elementary world language retirement last spring, the elementary principals and the members of the central office team made a collective decision to take a step back and really evaluate and examine our elementary world language program. This fall, that work kicked off. We had a team that convened to engage in a review process of our goals and priorities, looking at schedules, looking at our instructional practices, as well as our curriculum to help us move this work forward. Those initiatives included gathering information from other districts who have world language programs that start before the students enter 5th grade, revisiting the research pertaining to early world language instruction, exploring how to expand world language in grades 4 through 6 here in Simsbury, reviewing our current curriculum, and we even offered a world language exploration class through the Department of Continuing Ed, which was running and it's still space available for a few sessions after school for students who want to continue and explore language development. We've had a great turnout of and interest with these programs. We've been offering courses with Chinese, Latin, French, and running 3 different Spanish classes. And we've had about 27 to 36 students enrolling in each of those sessions, so that has been pretty impressive.
So back in January of 2018, the Vertical World Language team met, and that was Erin, myself, Stephanie Shano, and then representatives from all languages and all levels. And we took a look back at our philosophy statement, which I think was past 2012, so it had been a little while, and we reevaluated it and we made some changes. Really, the biggest focus is on the ACTFL, which is our National Foreign Language Standards. They're essential areas of learning, which we call the 5 Cs: communication, cultures, connections, comparisons, and communities. And that's really where our work is grounded as we look at our essential learning outcomes and what we want our students to graduate Simsbury High being able to do. So we really want them to be able to communicate effectively, interact with cultural competence, connect with other disciplinary areas, develop insight of the nature of language and culture, and just be able to really, create empathetic lifelong learners. And really a lot of that works directly to being a global citizen, which we'll talk a little bit about after. So our goal is to build, obviously, a strong foundation of success of our students in all areas. And, research does show that studying a foreign language or a world language can really benefit students in a lot of different ways. I think the transferable skills that we talk often about, thinking critically, communicating effectively, analyzing, synthesizing, and evaluating information are key components that show up in when you're studying a second language. Being able to interpret that information, that input in a second language, then be able to then have the language to then communicate it out is a very challenging thing. And so it kind of automatically brings students to that next level of learning. There's also a lot of research that supports a strong correlation between, a standardized test and academic achievement and the SATs, and, just enhancing career opportunities in a global society. And really, at the end of it, again, it talks about, just really enhancing global understanding and promoting goodwill and friendship, and really going back to that global citizen, which we really want to encompass in our Simsbury students. So this, as we looked at what we wanted our students to be able to do, especially when we talked about the elementary program, we did look directly back to the vision of the graduate, and I don't think there was one world language teacher that didn't feel strongly that global citizen should have been one of those 6 attributes. So we were really excited when that actually did come to fruition. And, but it doesn't even just stop there. Being a strong communicator and collaborator, self-directed learner, those are all attributes that can be seen throughout the curriculum. Regardless of the language, regardless of the age level, and it's really built right into the ideas that we want to, our students to be able to do by the time they graduate 12th grade as a world language student.
So as part of our
I'm
process,
trying to trick you,
It's
but
true.
we needed to.
We're good. You know what? We're educated. We can follow.
as part of our process, we reviewed quite a bit of research, and one of the documents that we looked at that came from the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Language, which Amy just spoke about, clearly shows that the earlier we begin language instruction increases the likelihood of students becoming more proficient in languages. And so this really influenced our proposal that we're sharing tonight, which is to not only expand our world language program by offering Spanish instruction starting in grade 4, but also increasing the instructional minutes that we've been providing. So as you can see here, that our recommendation is that starting in grade 4, students would receive Spanish for 45 minutes one time a week. In 5th and 6th grade, they would receive Spanish 45 minutes 2 times a week. And what's different about this is that our current practice in grade 6, our students receive 90 minutes of instruction, but that's over the course of a 6-day rotation. So every 6 days, the schedule changes. So this gives them more time, more instructional minutes. It gives teachers more instructional time within a given lesson to provide that explicit systematic instruction that will begin to map backwards from our goals and outcomes for students by the time they leave grade 6. We also took a look at our curriculum, and that review process started with Amy and Stephanie and the world language teachers by thinking carefully about where we want our students to leave grade 6 so that they're prepared for our middle school curriculum, which prepares them for our rigorous high school curriculum. And you can look at what those bullets suggest and represent. But we really thought through a well-articulated vertical progression. So starting in grade 4, those skills will build and progress by the time they get to grade 5 and develop even further and go deeper by the time they exit grade 6. And over time, there certainly could be implications for our middle school and our high school curriculum as we're building a stronger foundation for those students who will begin this instruction in grade 4. We spent some time creating a possible schedule to determine exactly what the FTE would be what the exact FTE is that would be necessary to support this proposal. So we looked at the number of sections, the number of teachers, the number of classrooms, and what we would need to in our budget. And what we're recommending is the addition of a 1.2 FTE. And our hope is that through this budget process, we will be able to secure that FTE so we can implement this model starting in the 1920 school year.
Anyone have any questions, thoughts?
What other languages do they teach in middle school? Sorry, Jen.
They offer French, Spanish, Chinese, and Latin once they reach grade 7. And so one of the things that we really try to talk about when we look at our 4-6 curriculum and just offering Spanish is that it's more about the skills. It's about opening their eyes and allowing them to just kind of explore a different language and hear a different language, but start to develop those skills of what it's like to not always understand everything that's spoken to you and understands everything that you've read, and really just kind of try to work through the coping mechanisms that you would need to be able to be successful when hearing a different language. So we really are trying to focus on what the skills will be so that whatever path they decide when they do get to the middle school, hopefully they have a little bit of a background that they're able to feel comfortable in exploring a different language when they get there.
Any other?
We met, and I was remiss in my communications and not saying, we met as curriculum committee and had a presentation last week on this. And we did discuss, a lot of options. A lot of school districts start in kindergarten, and so, what is that part of our thought process? And I think down the road, that certainly is an investment we'd like to make, Tom, to kind of go back to you. But that this gives us it's a more credible program than we've had in a long time. It gives the kids really good exposure and to help them choose the language maybe. And then hand in hand with this new after-school program that's going on, these kids are going to have good connections at the middle school when it's time to choose a language.
And the curriculum what curriculum we're designing our own curriculum, or it's a program set up?
So we currently do have a grade 5-6 curriculum, and we did go back and look at that. A lot of what we created, we were struggling with the current model to get through. So we are hoping that with some enhancements and making adjustments, because obviously 1 time a week is going to look different than 2 times a week or every other day. But still, the essential learning outcomes are really going to probably stay the same, and we'll have to reevaluate that once those 4th graders do make their way through to see if that we can expand or need to adjust that at all. But really, the curriculum that we had for 5-6 was pretty rigorous, and we were not finding ourselves getting even close to really getting through what we were hoping to. And the middle school has always kind of made the adjustments just based on what the students were coming in with. So we're hoping that by being able to start in 4th grade, they'll have more of an opportunity to actually get through, what we have designed as what we feel would be good for kids to be ending 6th grade with.
Further question. If we do expand this program into the lower grades, will the students be giving something up in order to bring this in? And if they are, what are we giving up?
So Beth and I actually took a look at our instructional minutes. We looked at our curriculum, and we've been talking with the elementary principals about some possibilities and options. It will certainly, we have some recommendations that we will share with the principals and suggestions. We have a pretty full language arts block. And so there's some time there. There's some time already in the instructional minutes for grades 5 and 6. And so we'll be making some of those recommendations in schools, and teachers will be making some of those decisions with some guidance, but with their principals as they see how their day falls with the different breaks that they have for specials and lunch and recess and finding some long blocks of time. So that's all been taken into consideration as we're building some schedules with our principals.
So the time for this program for the lower grades will be taken out of other aspects of language arts?
We may be looking at some instructional minutes from other places to borrow from to offset the time.
Tom, that's something as we get further into just processing this as we go, as we get further into the budget process and Neil does his staffing presentation, we could come back with further detail on what those allocations would look like and where we would pull from. I think that's an important piece.
And are the teachers in on that conversation?
They will be
Your
in
committee?
on that conversation.
So,
yes,
yes. Because their input would be invaluable.
It's absolutely invaluable.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Language arts is very important. I mean, world language is very, very important, and so I appreciate
Can I
the
ask
conversation.
one
Yes.
quick thing? On the Do you know, as a percentage, how many kids actually go into the other languages when they're only getting like Spanish in the elementary school?
I would say it's about 50%
is,
switch to a different
they do.
language. I would say about 50 stay with Spanish, and then the other languages,
Not forced in. They could pick Spanish.
And yeah, of course, they are not forced at all. And I think a lot of it comes down to, and I think this exploration, this after-school program is also really giving them, our current students, a real eye of what another language would be like. But I don't think they are concerned at all by, well, my background already is just in Spanish. Students have different interests and they gravitate to whatever they're really interested in. It doesn't seem like that program, the elementary program, seems to sway them one way or the other.
Cool.
But just the being able to have the experience of having some of those skills and getting that at the lower levels. A lot of the programs do offer Spanish just at the lower levels, and then they're eventually able to choose whether it's in the middle school or even in the high school.
And will those after-school programs still be offered even if this goes?
You're
this
hoping
happens?
to continue that. That allows the kids a little bit more insight as to what it would look like if they continued.
Those are big numbers. That's great.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay.
That's great. Thank you so
more to
much.
come. All
Thank
right.
you.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
So, I'm sorry, that's on me. So next, we are working on the NASDAQ enrollment projections.
Yes.
Yay.
So as Mr. Frank noted earlier, we aren't in budget season quite yet, but I always say that this presentation is the spur that gets it going, because it lets us look at the numbers that we will be experiencing next year and then into the future. So this is built off your October 1 enrollment report that you see. We take that October 1 report, send it off to the demographers at NASDAQ, and through a survival cohort algorithm that they have, they turn around a predictability model that lets us know what enrollment is going to be. So some basic assumptions going into that. Right now in Simsbury, by far the largest cohorts are currently in the high school and are going to be, you think about how many are leaving 12th grade and entering kindergarten, and that's going to be a much smaller number entering kindergarten than leaving the high school. However, our net move-ins are getting even stronger than they've been. And that has a little bit to do with the developments that are going into town, but also people who are moving out of typical single-family homes in Simsbury and into some of those developments, and thus emptying their house for a family. And then you'll see also in your folder a document I gave you during that October 1, but I wanted you to have again, that we provided NASDAQ with the most up-to-date information about all those new developments, and they have definitely taken it into consideration beginning with this process last year. And as they always like to point out, they trust their numbers pretty well for years 1, 2, and 3 of this, and then they're less certain beyond 3 years for their projections. They provide us projections up to 10 years out. They sort of very solidly stand by 3 years. They're okay with 5, and then they tell you after 5, really, that's why we make this an annual process.
Neil?
Sure.
Is this kind of thing happening in a lot of communities? Is this, I mean, are they surprised by this, or did they say, yeah, we get it? And
No, they're not surprised by it, because this kind of housing is more common.
Right.
And so, for instance, South Windsor is another community that had a lot of similar housing develop, and they actually, are sort of used to that notion that multifamily housing is more common than maybe it was a couple decades ago.
So they're used to kind of working these into their numbers.
Yeah. So, what we start with is just simply the last 5 years, the where we've been, and you can see that, as this board knows, we have had a decline of about 236 students over the last 5 years. Interestingly, as those who have been on the board have known, we've talked about the bubble of shrinking enrollment for a while. Right now, in the last 5 years, you can see that most of that impact has actually worked its way now through the middle school, which just a few years ago was right in that 740 student range and has come all the way down to like 610 in a very short period of time. That's what you'll see in a moment the high school's about to experience as that bubble hits the high school. So, and then as you look at, those were the past 5 years, here's the future 5 years. That is as remarkably flat an enrollment curve as you can possibly see. So that we are at 4,018 at October 1st of this year, and you see nothing lower than 3,996 and nothing higher than 4,041. So what I'm about to show you is that what they're predicting is certainly a decline at the high school, but that your elementary enrollments are going to be creeping back up. And that thus will have a balancing effect on the overall enrollment. So to show that to you graphically, 4 quadrants here, upper left is that K-12 number. So you can see an almost negligible decrease next year of 17 students and an equally negligible increase over the next 5 years of 23, all within kind of 1% either way. But at K-6, you can see an increase for next year of 20 students, and 5 years out, an increase of 235 students, or a little more than 10% of current elementary population. So that's interesting. That's a different trend. I'll show you why in a few slides, okay? And it has to do with a ratio of births to how many students that 5 years later end up in a school district, and it has to do with the fact that more people whose children weren't born in Simsbury move into Simsbury as they become school-age kids.
Excuse me, now, if you're going to get to this, that's a pretty big number right there, and maybe you're going to get into this, and excuse the question, but will that occur uniformly across the district, or is it going to be concentrated in one part of the
If
district?
you can wait a minute.
It's coming. It's coming.
It's coming.
You gotta wait.
Okay.
I try
My
to
strong
build
suit.
suspense.
It's his presentation style. You got to go for the ride.
Okay, sorry.
At the middle school, the next year is the only year that this year is an increase, actually. The last slightly larger 6th grade to 7th grade cohort coming in, so an increase of 20 students for next year. That's why we did not, in this past year, look at an FTE cut, knowing that was coming. And then, virtually flat over the next 5 years. But that bubble that has moved its way through the middle school, if you look at the lower right quadrant, is going to impact the high school. So 57 students down just next year, and almost 200 students in 5 years.
Yeah.
So you're going to see a current high school of 1,420 become a high school of 1,220 very quickly. So it is not uniformly going to be spread out if you can trust NESDEC's projections here. So this is elementary. The 3 columns represent current, 10/1 of 2018. The middle column is 1 year out, and the last column is 5 years out. And if you take a quick glance at that, they are predicting that Latimer will have by far the largest increase in population. I think they're predicting that because of the new developments, not only on the Hartford property, but also Aspen Green, as we provided them with data about new housing projects. And that potential of there's even more potential on the Hartford property, depending on whether a large portion of the property is back up for sale. Would another developer come in and do something with that piece of property? So a very large increase at Latimer, whereas you see more modest increases at Central, Squadron, and Terrifil, and no increase at all over 5 years at Tooten Hills. So it's, and I'm going to talk about a process that we're going to be entering into very soon that I think is going to get us even better information on this. At Henry James, you can see that, that next year we'll be at our highest point of 630 students, and that will decline to the point where we are really at about 300 students per grade. For the foreseeable future, we're going to be at 300 students in each grade at the middle school. At the high school is where you see those significant enrollment declines. So to go from where we are now at just short of 1,420 students to very quickly 1,362 for next year, 1,296, all the way down to 1,221 a couple years beyond that. That's pretty rapid decline, and will be accompanied by, you know, when you have 200 fewer students in a high school, a typical teacher load is about 100 students. So if you take that across departments, that more or less means, you know, if it works out perfectly, it's sort of 2 fewer English teachers, 2 fewer math teachers, 2 fewer science teachers, and we'll have to be looking very closely at retirements as we take stock of what that's going to do to our enrollment. Here's why these numbers are changing. This is a chart that I try to explain every year, and we'll see whether you bite this year, because it's really interesting. The top chart is the enrollment in kindergarten. So if you look right in the middle at 2018-19, this is a 10-year run, we currently have 268 kindergartners on October 1st. Those 268 kindergartners came from 167 births 5 years ago. Okay?
Within the town of Simsbury.
Within the town of Simsbury. Registered births of the town of Simsbury 5 years ago were 167 births. Go back 3 years back from where we are now and find the 2015-16 school year. 5 years before 2015, we had the same exact number of births in Simsbury registered. That 167 only generated 225 kindergartners. So the difference between the same number of births generating either 225 or 268 kindergartners 5 years later is how the multiplier effect is now changing. And now they're taking that multiplier effect and applying it across the schools. So that's why, and that kind of sharper slope of the line going from 2015-16 is a trend that we were watching, and it's a trend that has become more true over time. Thus, the distance between those two lines has widened.
What's causing that? Is it
What's
magnet? Is it like magnet school enrollment going down?
It's
or-
net move-ins. It's people whose children were born in another town,
Right.
and yet by the time they register them for kindergarten or first grade, I call it the Lemke effect. The Lemke children were not born in Simsbury, but as they came, they wanted to start their family's schooling in Simsbury. That's when they moved into town.
And we're very happy to have you.
I'm very happy to be here.
So
it's not people. It's. I get that. I just wondered if there were other places that people aren't going and staying.
oh
as
yes,
well.
if
Choosing our school
you look
system.
Yeah, instead of private schools or magnets or homeschool or something
or
like
people
that.
move out. So if you look in other towns, because I've looked at these demographic studies in other places, the dotted line is actually below the birth line. People will move out of a town. And so ours is very healthily kind of net move-ins.
Magnets have been pretty flat overall.
This is what we say all the time when we talk about
Yes.
the value of our schools.
Correct.
And when people say, I moved to Simsbury for the schools, and the importance of making sure that we invest.
It's a very interesting data point.
And keep,
Yeah.
keep the lines
Yes.
relative to the
Yeah.
way they are.
Right. So you found that one a little more interesting this year, because.
I liked it last year,
Oh,
too.
thank you.
The two of you, really.
And so just to conclude the presentation, obviously it suggests that over the next 5 years, extremely flat. So we should probably stop talking about declining enrollment in Simsbury.
Right.
I mean, this is the point where we should really, it's not declining anymore, it's flat at this point.
Yeah.
And what it is flat because an increase at the elementary is going to offset the decline. We have 4 more years of decline at Simsbury High School, then we really aren't declining anymore. Current economy and real estate situations, we can continue to anticipate stronger in-migration, and we're going to have to look really closely at those new developments. By far, that enrollment decline at high school is going to be your biggest challenge as a board. So as we come to you with staffing proposals, we're going to see, we are going to be able to yield some efficiencies at the high school, and how quickly and how strategically can we get those efficiencies and still be making wise personnel decisions about the people that we have. And, you know, where sometimes you say, we're not going to make a decision this year to shrink that department because we know there's a retirement next year, and we'll make a more strategic decision about how we're going to do that. I'm very excited about the last bullet, that as part of the facilities and enrollment study that was approved through the capital improvement process, we are going to engage with another company. So NESDEC does this work for us. But the other player in this work in the state of Connecticut is a firm that really has a strong reputation called Malone & McBroom. And they actually do a service that's a little bit more specific, because what NESDEC's work is based on is mostly those multiplier effects and the algorithms, whereas Malone & McBroom will more geographically cite for you exactly where families are and which neighborhoods you're going to experience growth in over the next period of time. So they call it geo-mapping of their students, and it's going to allow us, as we enter into a study of our facilities combined with our enrollment, to say which neighborhoods are the ones that could have an impact if we were to make any decisions around moving some neighborhoods to a different zone. And it is a more sophisticated model of demographic study. We just signed the contract with the firm to do this, and we'll be starting that work as the new year comes. So we're actually going to probably be bringing you another enrollment report based on Malone & McBroom's work to complement what NESDEC is doing. And I'm excited about it. So,
We can tell, Neil, thank you very much for your enthusiasm. Questions?
questions?
Oh, just a comment. That Tooten Hills number is really interesting.
Right.
It's very, very interesting. I live out that way. I'm very familiar with the neighborhoods. And there's no construction there. It just
Yep.
isn't any. There's
Yep.
not.
And then you take a look at the Latimer number,
Yeah.
and knowing that of all the buildings we have right now,
Down there at Route 10.
Latimer is tight already,
Yep.
Yeah.
you know, in terms
Yep.
of capacity. So it's very timely
But
with the study.
in my lifetime here, forever, Latimer and Central have constantly back and forth and redistricted. One was always full and one was always, they were always
There
bouncing
was
back
always
and
room,
forth.
yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that they're still in that.
So you're saying our new high school reality is really a 1220 number?
Yeah, it should be for a while.
For a while.
For like 10, are you looking 10 years out? It's
I would
20
say you're going to have classes around 300 to 325 students. So I would say you're going to be comfortable, you're going to be
So come
between,
2023, we're
yeah,
gonna
you're going to be
settle in.
between
Yeah.
1,200 and 1,250 at that high, not really outside
Not
of
going
that
to
window.
swing back to where we've been.
No. No, because that would take classes closer to 400
100
students, and I
Right.
don't think
And
we're going to see
We're not
that.
getting there. So our enrollment's going to settle in around, okay.
But we think it'll level off. We're
It's
hoping.
going to go down to that number and then stay there.
Okay.
Well, won't that bubble that's coming in now eventually get there or not?
Yeah, but it takes a long time.
Yeah.
And
And those
Well,
new bubbles
but
are
that's-
about 300, not 400
That
like they were
400
back
or
when
450.
Yeah.
the high school was 1,600 kids.
Right, like my kids, with the exception of Jimmy, all graduated in classes of 400 or
Yeah.
more.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just the demographics across the country about family size.
Yeah.
That the same homes that are housing these families probably have fewer kids.
Now, has the birth rate gone across the country? It's declined?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So it's across the country.
And it's definitely in Connecticut.
Not in the bachelor household.
You really are holding your own. Thank you very
holding
much.
my own.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much for all that.
Keep everyone employed.
Good job, Jen.
Excellent. Jen, you've got so many
You're
talents.
welcome.
be greatly appreciated. Moving on, I think, to the Henry James project.
Yes, Burke has an update for us tonight.
Okay, got a little bit of verbal update and then some visuals to talk about. Just wanted to step back and talk about the construction process. There are 3 phases that we have to get through to work with our architects and the construction management firm to get out to bid. And the goal is to get out to bid early this winter in February to hit the ground running for construction in this upcoming year. We started with the approval back in May, and working with Castle Booz, the architects for this project, we went through the first phase, which was schematic design, working with our principal, our department supervisors, and really looking again at the programs that would be impacted by this project. The next level is what we just finished, which is the design development level. So back at the beginning of the month, December 3rd, design development level of drawings, a little bit more detail was presented to the Public Building Committee, and along with that is a cost estimate, because now you have a little bit more level of detail to make your estimate on. So there were actually 2 estimates that were done by outside professional cost estimating firms, and then those were sort of averaged. So I attached a copy of just that 1-page summary of the cost estimate, and the positive news there is that it's still under budget for the base budget. There are a lot of contingencies built into that, and generally as you move through this process, the next level is called the construction document level. That's the last of those 3 phases. So when you get to that level, which is going to be very, very soon, we're looking to first week in January to have those drawings dropped off, and also a cost estimate by January 14th to the Public Building Committee. That's where you'll have a little less contingency and a little more comfort level with how much this is likely to cost, but you really don't learn until you go out to bid what those actual costs are. So not only does the Public Building Committee have to approve these plans and the local inspectors, but also the Board of Education. So just giving you that heads up that it's looking like your second meeting in January on the 22nd would be the meeting where we have the architects here for your final review and approval of that process. So I've given, we've given you access to the current level of drawings in that link. We've also got hard copies, and if anybody wants to ask questions about those drawings, you know, please don't hesitate to call me or stop in, and we can try to get those questions clarified for you. So as soon as we get that next level of drawings, we'll make those available to you also.
Thank you very much.
But in terms of what's been happening at the state level, we have to get approval to go out to bid because we applied for a school construction grant. So we had a meeting last week with the architects, the construction management firm, which is Downs Construction. They are still looking at the drawings, but we got good feedback from the state so far, and we have a meeting on the 23rd where we hope to get sort of a final sign-off, which you need to be able to go out to bid. And there's some local approvals that are happening. There was a public hearing that was opened last week, and next week will be is opening back up for public comment, and that has to do with starting really with some of the zoning and some of the site issues. So there's this slide here, I'm just going to highlight, has these areas in green. You know, white is the new construction square footage of the auditorium and the library media center, and the green area essentially is going to be an area where they're going to fence in for construction, and they have 2 separate areas there. What I wanted to highlight is this area here where you see this proposed landscaping. That's the parking, and one of the alternates that you see on the bottom of the cost estimate is actually to add some additional parking to the front and do some ADA improvements there. So it's looking like, you know, as this cost estimate moves forward, that we should be able to do various alternates, but you have to be careful and not, have a base bid that has too much in it in case the numbers come in higher than you expect. So I'm going to highlight here, there's this new wing would leave you with a courtyard. And so I've got a site plan that just blows up to that courtyard area. It would have benches, it would have some tables, so you could actually have some student instruction time out there. And that's something that again, all of these are subject to our zoning board and some of our other local review processes. This is a view obviously done by a landscape architect and part of the Castle Booth team. But
He's as enthusiastic about his trees as Neil is about numbers.
The intent is to show you, and this is a little bit hard to orient, but this set of doors there, believe it or not, is really what's there now from the street on the sort of the left-hand side or south side of it. So this would be part of the new auditorium from that angle, and then down below, this is more from the south, closer to the driveway if you were coming in this way, of what that might look like, with this being essentially the entrance to the DCE sort of area from that side of the building. So that's a little bit of the rendering there. This is now going to the north side, looking at the Library Media Center, which, as you saw, is in the north end of the building. So you would really only see this view if you were on the site and back around the school behind the playing fields.
Nice.
So very much in keeping with what is there now. It's not going to look and so while the local boards are looking primarily on the outside and the exterior features, just wanted to remind the board, just based on the color coding of what's really happening within the building. So again, the brand new construction is your blue section. The dark green, this is family consumer science, where there's really a full replacement of what's there and reconfiguration of many of those rooms. The dark green rooms on the first and second floor are where we're renovating the classroom labs. That's the highest level of renovation. The lighter green for the basic classrooms, there's mainly flooring, new lighting, and painting of walls. We are hoping to, you'll see that one of the other larger cost estimates for an alternate is to do more painting, such as painting of the ceilings and other sort of basic maintenance, so that when you're finished, it looks more coherent, but like you've touched most of the building. Even the areas in white, there's actually some sprinkler work there, so that's still part of the scope of work. It's really only the gray areas where we have, in phase one, we did the main office. Phase two, we added these swing space classrooms, the nurse's office, and then in decades prior, we did other renovations. So the areas in gray in the first floor in phase one, we renovated in those stairwells. Those areas not being touched. So we're trying, when we're done, to really have given everything at least some level of improvement. And that's a quick overview. And again, please give me a call with any detailed questions that you might have.
Just one quick question, that just for general information, that escalation, 3% escalation, do you have any idea whether that will be affected by the tariff decisions?
You know, I have not heard the bus estimators speak particularly to that. I had a similar question myself. I've not heard anything new. This will be done again in several more weeks. So we'll you know, whatever the latest news is at that time will, I guess, be part of their estimate. But it really will matter what happens when contractors put pen to paper in February, March.
Thank you.
And all that green, light green and dark green, will be done in the summer?
No, not exclusively. Now, one of the areas, one of the meetings that Scott Baker and his team are going to be having with Downs Construction is to talk about where are those areas of swing space where we actually would be able to have a separation of no students in those areas. They'd sort of build a wall and actually be able to do work in a certain number of rooms that would not be utilized for instructional space. Even though most of the work would get done during the summer, there is still the need to do work throughout the school year, since it's about an 18-month estimated project. So they would certainly be able to do the areas in blue without impacting
agreed,
the
right,
current
the
school.
kids.
But there is going to be the need to kind of work your way through, and they'll be talking about, what are the practical ways to do that, and what is the impact on the schedule that has to be built. So
Right.
that's important work for Scott and Ange to do.
Scott has already done this one, so that's the good news. Anybody have any other questions?
When put on the extra classrooms, I don't know, remember how many years ago it was.
You mean the north wing here?
The north, the 8-1, the,
These?
Or you mean the art
Which
rooms?
one?
To the
to
left,
the
the
left,
art.
the music and art.
rooms.
Music and art wing.
Yes.
that was,
Was there ever like contemplation of an auditorium? I mean, it just seems like it slides in there right.
Yeah, it does,
so
it
perfectly.
niches right.
Lobby here.
That's why
was
it's-
built with that anticipation.
Right.
One of it is
Correct.
we're not creating a separate.
and that's why it fits in there with that angle.
is.
So that was done back around 98 to 2000.
Okay. Yeah, it just,
It does niche right in there.
and without it, it's got that emptiness. It fits
Right.
nicely.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brett.
Appreciate it. Moving on, public audience. Anyone want to share anything?
Yes, it did.
Seeing none, moving on, future business. Our next board meeting is Tuesday, January 8th. Again, the Hall of Fame dinner is January 5th. So if there are things we have a budget meeting January 8th. It's going to be a very busy week. So rest up for it. And look forward to seeing you all then. Seeing that there's no more business, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned, and thank you very much.
Neil.